I never expected my research to lead me anywhere unusual. From the beginning, my work was grounded in practical observation and routine analysis. I was studying architectural design in older public buildings, focusing on how past societies approached comfort, efficiency, and functionality. Modern architecture follows strict ergonomic standards. Doorways are designed for average height. Staircases are calculated for natural stride. Hallways are optimized for movement. Furniture is built around standard human proportions. Everything is measured, tested, and adjusted for convenience. But when I began examining 19th century structures, something felt subtly wrong. Doorways were taller than necessary. Hallways felt wider than practical use demanded. Staircases forced longer steps than felt natural. Railings were positioned higher than comfortable reach. Desks and counters stood above average working height. Even chairs and benches seemed strangely oversized. At first, these details seemed insignificant. Individually, they could be dismissed as stylistic choices. But when observed together across multiple buildings and regions, they formed a consistent pattern. My first explanation was symbolism. History is filled with grand architecture meant to communicate power. Governments and institutions often build large to intimidate, impress, and reinforce authority. Massive columns, towering ceilings, and expansive halls make individuals feel small. They send a message: you are entering a place of control. So I assumed these buildings were simply expressions of dominance, frozen into stone and wood. For several months I worked methodically. I measured entrances in courthouses. I recorded stair dimensions in municipal offices. I photographed hallways in colonial-era administrative buildings. I examined preserved furniture in museums and storage facilities. I noted seat heights, desk lengths, counter placements, and shelf elevations. Every measurement was logged and compared. The results were remarkably consistent. These structures exceeded practical human proportions by significant margins. What made this puzzling was their purpose. These were not royal palaces. They were not ceremonial halls. They were not religious monuments. They were working environments. Offices where clerks processed paperwork. Rooms where administrators held meetings. Facilities where supervisors managed logistics. These were spaces meant for daily use, where efficiency should have mattered more than visual impact. Excessive scale made no sense here. Still, I resisted drawing unusual conclusions. I searched for conventional explanations. Maybe building codes were different. Maybe materials were thicker. Maybe construction techniques required extra space. Maybe ventilation and lighting demanded higher ceilings. Maybe acoustics influenced design. Maybe architects favored exaggerated proportions. Each explanation sounded reasonable. None of them seemed impossible. History often contains strange trends that feel irrational when viewed through modern standards. So I accepted these theories without much resistance. Then I began examining 19th century photographic archives. My goal was simple. I wanted visual confirmation of how these buildings were used. I searched for images of workers inside government offices, construction crews at sites, clerks at desks, and administrators in meeting rooms. I wanted to see how people interacted with these spaces. Instead, I found something unexpected. Scattered among ordinary photographs were images of extremely tall individuals. At first, I thought they were anomalies, but the more I searched, the more I found. Men and women standing beside average height people, towering over them by 2 or even 3 feet. Their bodies were proportionate. Their limbs were balanced. Their posture was relaxed and natural. They did not appear distorted. They did not look theatrical. They did not resemble circus performers or medical curiosities. They looked real. What struck me immediately was the technical authenticity of these photographs. The lighting was consistent across subjects. Shadows fell naturally on the ground and walls. The grain structure was uniform. Depth of field behaved normally. Focus was accurate. These were not composites. They were not painted over plates. They were not staged illusions. They were genuine products of early photography. As I expanded my search, the pattern grew stronger. Tintypes from the 1860s. Cabinet cards from the 1870s. Glass plate negatives. Studio portraits. Outdoor group photos. Military-related images. Administrative gatherings. Family scenes. Across decades and locations, the same phenomenon appeared. Tall individuals standing calmly among others. What unsettled me most was how they were presented. No captions described them as giants. No notes labeled them as oddities. No promotional language surrounded them. They were treated as ordinary people. Well-dressed, composed, confident, integrated into social life. In an era fascinated by physical abnormalities, this absence of attention was strange. During the 19th century, people with unusual bodies were often exhibited, studied, and marketed. Yet these individuals were not framed that way. They were simply participants. Then I noticed another detail. Many of these photographs were taken in front of large buildings, courthouses, administrative halls, government complexes, institutional facades. When I began comparing the height of these individuals to the structures behind them, something shifted in my understanding. The proportions matched. The doorways fit them. The staircases suited their stride. The railings aligned with their reach. The counters met their hands naturally. The ceilings no longer seemed excessive. For the first time, the architecture made sense. These buildings were not oversized by accident. They were scaled for someone. And in that moment, my original assumptions collapsed. What I had dismissed as symbolic exaggeration now appeared functional. What I had explained away as stylistic preference now looked intentional. The spaces were not designed for average bodies. They were designed around a different physical standard. Once I recognized that connection, I could no longer ignore it. Every tall doorway, every massive staircase, every elevated counter, every oversized chair, they were no longer strange. They were evidence. And from that point forward, my research was no longer about architecture alone. It had become a question about who these spaces were truly built for. As the patterns between architecture and photography became clearer, my research began drifting in a direction I had never planned. What started as a study of building proportions slowly transformed into an investigation of forgotten geography, erased terminology, and missing historical context. I was no longer just measuring doorways and staircases. I was searching for explanations that could connect everything I had found. That was when a strange name kept appearing. It surfaced quietly in old atlases, outdated encyclopedias, and 19th century reference books. It appeared in footnotes, side comments, and geographical descriptions that most modern readers would overlook. The name was Tartaria. In books published during the 18th and early 19th centuries, Tartaria was presented as a vast and established region. It stretched across enormous portions of Central and Northern Asia, covering areas that today belong to several different countries. On historical maps, it was clearly marked with borders, cities, trade routes, and regional divisions. It was not treated as speculation. It was not described as mythical. It was not surrounded by mystery. It was treated as real. Writers mentioned Tartaria casually, as if its existence required no explanation. Cartographers labeled it confidently. Encyclopedias devoted entire sections to its climate, population, customs, and economy. Travelers wrote about passing through its territory. Scholars referenced it the same way they referenced France, Persia, or China. What struck me immediately was how normal its presence seemed. There was no sense that it was temporary. No suggestion that it was unstable. No indication that it was fictional. It appeared to be a stable political and cultural entity, integrated into the known world. Then, without warning, it disappeared. By the middle of the 19th century, the name began fading from official publications. New editions of encyclopedias removed it. Updated maps replaced it with different labels. Regions once marked as Tartary were suddenly absorbed into expanding empires or reclassified under new administrative systems. There was no dramatic explanation. No famous war. No major treaty. No widely recorded collapse. No celebrated conquest. The name simply vanished. This absence was deeply unsettling. Nations do not normally disappear without documentation. Even defeated civilizations leave behind treaties, resistance movements, occupation records, political correspondence, and detailed historical accounts. Their downfall becomes part of the historical narrative. But in the case of Tartaria, the paper trail was strangely thin. The more I searched, the more gaps I encountered. References ended abruptly. Descriptions became vague. Explanations were inconsistent. Sources contradicted each other. It felt less like natural historical change and more like gradual erasure. While the name vanished from books, the physical evidence remained. Across Siberia, Central Asia, Mongolia, and parts of Eastern Europe, massive stone structures still stood. Administrative complexes, fortified settlements, palatial halls, infrastructure systems, storage facilities, transportation hubs. Many of them were far larger and more sophisticated than their official explanations suggested. These structures displayed remarkable engineering precision. Massive stone blocks fitted together with minimal gaps. Foundations extended deep into frozen ground. Drainage systems showed advanced planning. Load-bearing elements demonstrated precise understanding of weight distribution. In many cases, there were no complete construction records, no verified blueprints, no detailed labor accounts, no financial ledgers, no comprehensive timelines. Historians often attributed these buildings vaguely to imperial initiatives or local craftsmanship, but rarely provided solid documentation. The explanations felt recycled and incomplete, repeated without deeper investigation. More disturbing was how often these structures shared the same oversized proportions I had observed elsewhere. Doorways were unusually tall. Halls dwarfed human movement. Staircases demanded long strides. Platforms and railings were set high. Workspaces were elevated. Once again, these were not purely ceremonial monuments. Many were functional buildings. They were designed for administration, storage, logistics, and governance. They were meant for daily use by workers, officials, and supervisors. Yet their scale did not match average human bodies. This raised a troubling possibility. What if these buildings were not designed for ordinary people? What if the towering individuals in the photographs were not isolated anomalies? What if they represented a structured social group? Modern science teaches that extreme height is rare and usually pathological. We are taught that human biology has remained relatively consistent for thousands of years. Large deviations are framed as medical conditions, not social patterns. But the evidence suggested something different. These individuals appeared too frequently. They appeared in multiple countries. They appeared across several decades. They appeared in official settings. They were photographed in uniforms. They stood beside administrators. They appeared in military contexts. They were present in government environments. They were not entertainers. They were workers, guards, supervisors, overseers, infrastructure managers, construction leaders. Their presence seemed functional, not decorative. This perspective began reframing many historical puzzles. If individuals of greater size and strength existed in sufficient numbers, then large-scale construction becomes more understandable. Heavy materials become manageable. Massive tools become usable. Precision engineering becomes more feasible. What appears impossible today becomes practical under different physical conditions. Then there were the reports of giant skeletons. Throughout the 19th century, newspapers across North America and Europe regularly published accounts of unusually large human remains. These reports described skeletons measuring 7, 8, even 10 or 12 feet. They were discovered in burial mounds, excavation sites, farmland, and construction projects. At the time, these reports were treated seriously. They appeared in reputable newspapers. They were written in neutral language. They included witness statements. They often referenced local officials. Readers accepted them as part of scientific discovery. Then they stopped. By the early 20th century, such reports vanished from mainstream media. Many previously documented specimens were reportedly transferred to major institutions for study. Today, those institutions claim no records. Files are missing. Catalogs are incomplete. Documentation is fragmented. Once again, the timeline aligned. The photographs peaked in the late 19th century. Skeleton discoveries peaked in the same period. References to Tartaria vanished in the same era. Then everything went quiet. It no longer looked like coincidence. It looked like consolidation. A moment when history was simplified. A moment when inconvenient complexity was removed. A moment when alternative narratives were replaced with standardized explanations. If advanced systems had existed recently, if large-scale infrastructure had been inherited rather than invented, if human diversity had once been greater, then modern civilization would face uncomfortable truths. It would mean we were not starting from nothing. It would mean we were building on something forgotten. And that possibility was something official history seemed unwilling to confront. What disturbed me most was not the possibility that unusually tall people had once existed. Human biology is capable of surprising variation. Medical science confirms that extreme height, although rare, is possible. Throughout history, there have always been individuals who fell far outside average physical limits. That idea alone did not trouble me. What truly unsettled me was the collective silence that surrounded the evidence I had uncovered. Everywhere I looked, the same pattern appeared. Across universities, museums, archives, and research institutions, there was no serious public discussion about these patterns. No major conferences. No funded research projects. No comprehensive investigations. No long-term studies. Instead, there was quiet avoidance. Photographs were archived and labeled as unverified. Skeleton reports were dismissed as exaggerations. Oversized architecture was explained away as stylistic preference. Unusual artifacts were categorized as curiosities. Each piece of evidence was isolated, separated, neutralized. No one was encouraged to connect them. No one was invited to ask whether they formed a larger picture. This kind of silence is far more powerful than censorship. Censorship creates controversy. It attracts attention. It invites resistance. Silence, on the other hand, works quietly. It removes subjects from conversation without creating conflict. When questions are never funded, never published, and never discussed in classrooms, they slowly disappear from public consciousness. Over time, people stop noticing what is missing. Absence becomes normal. When I attempted to present my findings to professionals, the response was almost always the same. Polite interest, brief acknowledgement, then dismissal. Interesting, they would say. Probably coincidence. Hard to verify. Not enough evidence. And then they would move on. It did not matter whether I spoke to historians, archaeologists, architects, or archivists. The reaction rarely changed. There was no hostility, no open rejection, no heated debate, just gentle indifference. A quiet signal that further inquiry was unnecessary and unwelcome. What made this more unsettling was its uniformity. Different institutions, different countries, different disciplines. Same response. It suggested invisible boundaries, limits on what could be questioned, limits on what was worth pursuing. I began to realize that modern historical understanding is shaped as much by what is ignored as by what is recorded. Archives are not neutral. Museums are not objective. Textbooks are not complete. They reflect priorities, funding structures, political pressures, and cultural comfort zones. Topics that challenge established narratives tend to receive less attention, less support, and less visibility. Over time, this creates an illusion of certainty. We believe we understand our past because the books seem comprehensive, but they are curated. Countless documents remain unpublished. Countless artifacts remain in storage. Countless photographs remain unseen. What we call history is often just the visible surface of a much larger archive. I kept returning to the individuals in the photographs. They were not anonymous figures. They had faces, expressions, posture, presence. Some looked confident. Some looked reserved. Some smiled faintly. Others appeared formal and serious. They wore tailored clothing, polished shoes, carefully styled hair. They stood beside spouses, siblings, co-workers, and officials. They participated in ordinary social rituals, weddings, group portraits, workplace gatherings, family scenes. They trusted that their images would preserve their existence. Instead, they were quietly forgotten. By refusing to acknowledge them, we transformed documented individuals into implausible legends. We turned real people into internet myths. We dismissed their reality because it complicated our assumptions. In doing so, we stripped them of historical dignity. Yet the physical world continues to testify. Massive doorways still frame modern offices. Oversized staircases still challenge visitors. Elevated counters still force people to reach upward. Furniture that feels subtly uncomfortable remains in old buildings. Enormous tools continue to surface in barns, demolition sites, and abandoned workshops. Wrenches 4 to 6 feet long. Hammers weighing over 100 pounds. Levers designed for immense grip strength. They show wear. Polished handles. Compressed surfaces. Smooth edges. Signs of repeated use.